were clearly giving the Pope a Masonic handshake and others were not. But even with this evidence, it is still not possible to say that the Pope is a Mason. There simply is not enough evidence. I would like to continue my discussion of the obelisk as a concealed symbol of the ancient mystery religion. This is a picture of the new Mormon temple in San Diego, California. This is a more stylized use of the twin obelisks, but it appears that someone knew what the twin obelisks meant and have incorporated them into their design of the new temple. So even the Mormon temples use the twin obelisks in their buildings. And there is another connection to the hidden worship of Lucifer built into this Mormon temple. This is a close-up of the area underneath one of the obelisks. Notice that there are 7 dark panels and 6 light panels in between them. 7 and 6 make a total of 13, the hidden concealed number of Lucifer. It appears as if someone at the Mormon temple knows about the connection between the twin obelisks and the magic number 13. Some of the Catholic churches do not use the 2 spires. Some use only one, like this one, the 13th century cathedral at Glasgow. This is the Basilica of Our Lady of Fatima. Notice that it only uses 1 spire in the front of the church. And this is a picture of some students at Holy Cross Catholic University. The article had a quote in it that said there was a growing concern by many that U.S. Catholic colleges and universities are abandoning their religious roots. Maybe the reason that Holy Cross is losing its religious roots is because they have obelisks on the campus inviting the sun god to take residence there. Remember that the obelisk is a symbol of the very presence of the sun god himself. And here we see this concealed symbol on the campus of a Catholic university. Here is a similar use of a twin towers, this time near the Muslim site near Mecca. The obelisks do not have to be 4-sided. They can also be rounded or in column shape. This is a picture of the Blue Mosque in Istanbul. Notice the use of 2 Masonic symbols, the rounded dome, meaning the circle for the sun god, and the rounded obelisk. This is the Mosque of Suleiman the Magnificent. They also use the dome and the rounded obelisk. And this is the St. Sophia Museum in Istanbul. It uses the same 2 Masonic symbols, the rounded dome and the obelisk. This is another example showing you that concealed symbols to this Lucifer worship are in other faiths. This is the Cao Dai Temple in, I believe, Vietnam. Here we see not only the twin obelisk in front, but we see 2 other concealed symbols. Each of the twin obelisks appear to have 7 layers on them, meaning the concealed perfection of the number 7. But the architect appears to have built in 13 columns on the side of the temple. So here we see 3 Masonic symbols in one building. And this might be the reason why. This is a slide on the inside of the Cao Dai Temple, and here we see the all-seeing eye on a rounded sun-like globe. This temple appears to have been built by a member of the Scottish Rite Masonic Lodge. But we Protestants also build obelisks on our churches. This is a single obelisk on a single Protestant church in rural America. But I want to show you a slide that will make a point that it is not necessary to put obelisks on church buildings. This is a slide of a Baptist church here in Tucson that has no obelisk on the entirety of the building, and certainly not one on top. So it is not necessary to attach this symbol to Lucifer worship onto a church building. The obelisk is not only used on churches, it is also used on monuments. This is the George Washington Masonic National Memorial Monument, built as a, quote, fitting monument to commemorate the greatness of George Washington. The columns in front of the Masonic National Memorial Monument are exactly 33 feet high. The monument is called a beacon of light in an otherwise dark world. This is the front page of a tax form showing what is called the Carpenter's Hall, used by the Continental Congress in 1774. If you look closely at the top of the spire on the top, you will see a small square and compass. It has been placed upside down, but there is no mistaking the Masonic square and compass on the top of this building. These obelisks are often used to mark the location of an important date in American history. This obelisk is at Independence Hall, where our founding fathers met to write the Constitution, I believe. Here is an obelisk at Concord Bridge, where an important battle took place in the American Revolution. This is another obelisk at the Bunker Hill Monument. Here are several obelisks built into the memorial around where Abraham Lincoln delivered his brilliant speech at the Gettysburg battlefield during the Civil War. As far as I can tell, Abraham Lincoln was not a member of the Masonic Lodge. This is the Revolutionary Monument at Lexington, Massachusetts. Notice once again the use of an obelisk to mark the site of a Revolutionary War battle. This is a round obelisk at the site of the Boston Massacre during the American Revolution. This is a pair of obelisks near Copley Square in Boston, Massachusetts. The obelisk is often used to mark the burial site of a Mason. This particular one is in Boston, Massachusetts, in a cemetery there. This one is also in a cemetery near Boston, Massachusetts, to show you that it is not necessary to be buried under an obelisk. You can see the Christian cross in the background on the left side, where a Christian is probably buried there. Now, to show you that the obelisk is also used to mark an important site in another religion, this is an obelisk to mark the birth site of the Mormon leader Joseph Smith. It is claimed that Joseph Smith was a Christian, but notice that the Mormons did not build a cross. They built an obelisk to mark the site of his birth. It is known that Joseph Smith was a member of the Masonic Lodge, even though he frequently spoke out about secret societies. I'll talk more about this connection between Masonry and Mormonism a little later. The obelisk is often used to mark important governmental sites. This is the clock tower known as Big Ben, and it is attached to the Parliament building in London, England. And this is an obelisk attached to the City Hall in Gdansk, Poland. Here's the obelisk once again as part of the Canadian Parliament building in Ottawa. And here are some obelisks in Moscow, Russia. So we can see that the obelisk is worldwide. Here's a Buddhist shrine in Vietnam. Notice that the shrine has 7 layers on it, and 7 is the number of perfection or completion. Albert Pike told us what the number 7 signified. He wrote this on page 782 of his book entitled Morals and Dogma. Therefore, the 7 steps which lead up to the outer court of the temple are the emblem of the 7-fold light which we need to possess before we can arrive at the height of knowledge. And on page 102 of his book, entitled Legenda, Albert Pike wrote this: "The only thing that neither moves nor is moved is the most ancient ruler in chief, of whom the number 7 may pertinently be called an image." So it appears that the number 7 is the number of Lucifer. This is the largest obelisk in the world, located in Washington, D.C. It is called the Washington Monument, erected in memory of George Washington, who, as we've seen before, was a very visible Mason. This is not truly an obelisk because it is constructed of 36,000 separate blocks. This is a drawing of the monument showing that it is not one single block, but actually consists of many small blocks. All true obelisks are made of a single piece of stone, but the Washington Monument is a collection of many stones. The Washington Monument has a 3,300-pound capstone, and as I said, the number 33 is a symbolic number to the Masons. In fact, Helena Petrovna Blavatsky says that the number 33 is a sacred number. The Washington Monument played an interesting and concealed part in the movie called JFK. An interesting and concealed part in the movie JFK, made by Oliver Stone, the movie director. And I believe the reason it did was because Mr. Stone knew about the involvement of certain members of the Masons in the assassination of President Kennedy. In the movie, District Attorney Jim Garrison, portrayed by Kevin Costner, shown here on the right, met with the mysterious Colonel X, played by Donald Sutherland, on the left. Notice that they met in front of the Lincoln Memorial. You can just see the outline of Lincoln's head off to the left. That is the statue of President Lincoln in the left background. It is interesting to recall that President Lincoln was shot by John Wilkes Booth, shown here in this photograph, and Mr. Booth was a member of the Masons as well. The Colonel and Garrison start their conversation by walking out into the rain into the grassy park in front of the Lincoln Memorial. As they start their walk towards the park, Stone pans up and shows the moviegoer the Washington Monument. These two gentlemen sit down on a bench, shown here off on the left on the horizon, and Oliver Stone shows us that meeting with the Washington Monument directly behind them. You might not be able to see it on this slide, but it's off to the left, just to the left of these two gentlemen seated on the bench. And in another scene, a little closer than the last one, showing the two men together, Stone shows, once again, the Washington Monument. Colonel X starts walking away after their conversation is closed, and he starts walking towards the Washington Monument. I believe that Oliver Stone was telling us in a concealed manner that the Masons were somehow involved in the assassination of the president, because I believe that Mr. Stone knows. The obelisk is being used in construction all over America. This is a picture of the obelisk built into the University of Arizona building called the Old Main. This is a picture of a restaurant here in Tucson, and the architect built an obelisk into the center of the building. This is an obelisk of the same shopping center. You could make an argument that this is not an obelisk, but a clock placed on an object that looks like an obelisk, and I will accept that, except that he used the obelisk 3 times in the construction of this shopping center. So I believe that the architect knew what it meant. This is the shopping center here in Tucson that was recently remodeled. Notice that the architect used 4 obelisks and pyramids in the new construction. This is a rather dark photograph of Tucson's community center, and notice that they used 3 pyramids on the building. Obelisks and pyramids are showing up everywhere, both in new buildings and in remodeled buildings, because apparently architects are trying to tell us something. I'd now like to go back to my study of the Masonic Lodge. This is a picture of a book entitled Born in Blood by John Robinson. As I said before, I had the very distinct pleasure of meeting and debating Mr. Robinson on television in Tampa, Florida a few years ago. This particular television program had an audience of about 100 people, and all were members of the Masons. This was a very difficult time in my career, but I went prepared to document my charges by actually bringing the books I was quoting from with me. The Masons did not like that. Apparently a critic of the Masons cannot use their own information. Mr. Robinson's book contends that Freemasonry had its beginning in an organization called the Order of the Knights Templar. They started their organization during the 1300s. He is claiming that the current Masons can trace their history back to the Knights Templar. That thought was given some credence by Albert Pike on page 820 of his book entitled Morals and Dogma. This is what Mr. Pike wrote. Before his execution, the chief of the doomed order, and of course here he's referring to Jacques de Molay, the head at that time of the Knights Templar, organized and instituted what afterwards came to be called Scottish Masonry. Mr. Robinson adds an intriguing thought in his book. He adds this comment that during the Master Mason 3rd degree ritual, the initiate is told, "This degree will make you a brother to pirates and corsairs." The word corsair is French for pirate. This is, of course, a drawing of the pirate flag. Notice that it is a drawing of a skull detached from the body and the 2 leg bones. It is known that the Knights Templar in the 1300s owned 18 fighting ships berthed in the naval base at La Rochelle on the French coast. After the persecution of the Knights Templar by the Catholic Church started, these 18 ships sailed and became the pirates shown in all of those swashbuckling movies. Is it possible that Errol Flynn and Douglas Fairbanks, who portrayed pirates in the movies, were actually portraying Knights Templars who were actively plundering those who persecuted the secret organization? The pirates did plunder the persecutors of the Knights Templar. They persecuted by destroying the ships of the Catholic Church and the government. Could it be that this explains the past about the pirates shown in our movies? Could it be that it was the Masonic Lodge who sailed the ships under the pirate flag to plunder both the Catholic Church and the governments of Europe who prosecuted their leader? It is an interesting observation that makes a great deal of sense. This is a reproduction of the book cover used by a secret fraternity at Yale University called Skull and Bones. Each year, 15 juniors are invited into this secret fraternity by the departing seniors of the group. Notice that their symbol is a symbol of a skull and bones. Here is one of their most famous members,